All right, we have tracked the man down out of hiding. He has been kidnapped for the last couple of weeks off of the reservation. Nobody's known where he is, but we have been able to track him down, and we'll have him every Wednesday for a brief time talking recruiting. Welcome back out of the abyss, out of the wandering, Shea Dixon. It's good to see you again, buddy. How are you?
Good. I feel like you're playing like that was almost like where I've been was like the old undisclosed location type thing.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
It does kind of feel like that.
Had enough from the
I know where you've been. I know where you are.
I know where you are, and I've seen where you sleep.
Shea D, it's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Hanging. I like the setup continues to get nicer and nicer over here.
Thank you, buddy.
The headphones, which I was told I didn't have to wear,
Yeah,
but
you
they're
don't
here.
have
Now they're on.
Official?
Yeah. I feel, gosh, I can't remember what movie that was. It was one of the, I don't know, but it's like the summer camp, and they let the kid run the radio show, but like nothing's plugged in anywhere, and they're like, yeah, just put on the headphones.
That was Jordy Culotta Show Season 1.
Yeah, it was.
Is this working? No.
First 6 months
It's
of the
not
Jordy
even plugged
Culotta
in,
show.
but don't worry about it.
We didn't go live.
Shea, so what's been up, man? What's been going on? I know that you can't go into detail about what's coming up next, and that'll just kind of be a wait and see deal. But just what's going on with you?
Let's see. A lot of honeydews stuff around the house. We did get some vacationing in the month of June, but a point came where my lovely wife Emily reminded me that she does have a job and needs to go back to work. And
Your favorite place, the couch.
Sweet, I'll be here.
You were forgetting Sarah Marshalling it. Just
Yes.
Be home when you get
huge
here.
bowl of cereal. Like,
she would leave
what's
me
on the docket?
If she walked in and I had a big bowl of cereal, it would be for getting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
She would have walked right out of the end of it. And there would be no Hawaii. I've been hanging, getting some stuff done, popping around to
Guard looks great.
radio spots here and there. Yard looks okay right now.
Mm.
But yeah, and then kind of killing time till what's next. And
Yeah.
things like these are a good way to do it. So I'm glad you had the idea.
Absolutely. We'll be here every Wednesday talking recruiting with Shea. Who
Talking
is,
recruiting.
one of the top insiders and one of the go-tos for recruiting information, and there's a ton to get to. So we'll jump at it here in a moment.
I was out at Liberty Magnet
Okay.
yesterday.
Yeah.
It was Caleb Jackson made his announcement. We got there, and like they've got like the gym right there. It's a great campus, obviously, but I see media kind of hanging outside the gym, and a few of them were like, yeah, they said there'll be no media in there today. I turn to go right, and I already see people leaving, and Jacques doing like 90 out of the parking lot. Just like, I drove over here for this. Pissed.
I missed my run for this.
Right.
So I kind of hung around, and Caleb's mom was outside and said, he just wanted to have something low key in the gym. I think that's when everybody also too is like, wait, is he picking Bama? Is that why he doesn't want a bunch of people
Oh,
around?
God.
But he picked LSU
That boo baby.
on his mom's birthday, and she said that was a big deal to him that he wanted to do, and had his whole family there. I think you could tell family and the idea of staying home meant a lot, and it gives Frank Wilson the 1-2 punch in Louisiana. Trey Holly up at Union Parish, and then Caleb Jackson here in Baton Rouge at Liberty Magnet. They're the number 1 and 2 running backs in the state. Maybe some people, depending on the ranking service, might have one ranked higher than the other, but regardless, those are kind of consensus top 10, 15 running backs, and that's kind of right. I mean, you have the Leonard Fournettes, every once in a while, but that's been the Frank bread and butter, right, that we've known him for.
Yeah,
they had
absolutely.
there was always the years of, whoever it was, Alfred Blues, Michael Fords, Terrence McGee, Jeremy Hills, go on, but the state produces good running backs. You can go find them.
Yeah.
Hell, you can put them at linebacker, and they can be a Butkus Award winner.
How important, Devin White, how important was it to capitalize on those two guys after last year's cycle, missing out on Citizen and Moss?
Gosh, yeah, forget about that. I guess that's big, right? Because you had a handful of receivers leave the state last year, but you also had 2 running backs. And for them to be able to turn around and lock down the 2 guys this time in quick order, right, before their senior years, which is big. They can kind of put recruiting onto the back burner now. So that's a big deal. And you've lost Corey Kiner to, and I think we'll talk more about this maybe today, but maybe as we go on in the coming weeks. But the idea of going, far from here to get guys, and I think obviously a downside of that sometimes can be a Corey Kiner. I mean, he played last year, and just says, hey, look, I'm looking to go back home. I'm from Cincinnati. I'm going to play at Cincinnati now, and that was kind of it. So I think when you take two Louisiana backs, they tend to stick around on roster a bit longer, and they can be developed, and they'll wait their turn, and kind of won't be quick to say, hey, look, I'm going to go back home or kind of look for greener pastures of playing time.
Shea, you've seen a lot of success in recruiting. You've seen a lot of flurries of guys committing. What do you make over LSU's last 10-day stretch where they've had 9 guys commit to them and some, the tops at their position?
Right. I mean, this is all the culmination of the work they put in the spring, which would have been getting guys to campus, going out and seeing them during the evaluation period, really for the first time for this staff, getting to know all these guys and their families. And I think you shuffle the board from there. And then summer camp, which ran pretty much for about 3 or 4 weeks in June, was official visits, was kids getting offers, was kids being eval'd in person on campus. So all of that goes a really long way in determining, okay, we like these guys, and that's who we need to go push for. And for a while, there was a lot of worry among fans, angst maybe, that they only had a few commitments, right? And it was, when is the ball going to get rolling? And clearly from spring evals and visits to summer camps and the official visits, the dust kind of settles when everybody gets, recruit goes back home after all that and says, all right, it's a dead period now. Coaches aren't blowing me up. Let's talk about this. Am I ready to shut things down? I don't want it to be a distraction my senior year. And it kind of went one domino after the next for them. There wasn't much bad news across the past 10 days.
What do you make of the reach that they have shown in that stretch to be able to step out and go grab players from Minnesota and Indiana and Georgia and Baltimore and even a 5-star out of South Florida? What have you made of the ability to stretch?
Yeah, it's going to be something that's going to continue to be talked about. Like right now, there's no reason to really bang on them, right? I mean, they've got a top 10 class. They've got a top 3 class in the SEC. They're going out and getting, if you're getting 4 D linemen, let's say Jackson Howard, Minnesota, Deshaun Womack, Maryland, Josh Mickens, Indiana, Deron Reed, Georgia, all of these guys somewhere or another ranked top 10 at their position. Like, these are studs. I mean, most of them, at least in one spot, will be a top 100 guy. So it's good evals. You're going out and getting strong players when maybe you don't have a ton of D linemen in the state, things like that you'll have to address. And again, I think this will be a topic we talk about a ton. I think fans are going to ask about this of, when do you trend, like, how important does Louisiana have to be? Like, when do you trend back to really focusing on Louisiana first and foremost? And I'm not saying they're not doing that, but it's year one, it's early, it's a whole new staff, and there is some kind of explaining away of Arch was never coming. Eli was never coming. After Austin Osbury went to Auburn, there was a thought that Jaden may not stay in state. Tackett Curtis, no one ever thought was coming to LSU. Derrick Williams is one I was a little surprised by. He ends up at Texas coming out of New Iberia. Again, long way to signing day, but there's a good group of, you can just list off half the top 10. You would say, well, those guys weren't coming here anyway. So you have to go out and get all these guys. But one thing I'd say, I'm looking at kind of all the different websites right now, and the breakdown of the classes. On3 does a little average distance thing. The average distance of the 15 commits from Baton Rouge to their hometown is 1,000 miles, 1,025. That's a high number. But I think that'll start to shrink as they kind of focus more on Louisiana. But the good thing is right now that the dudes are going out and getting are addressing needs, and they're good players and highly thought of by a lot of the recruiting services. So to be sitting with 15 guys, maybe some more to come this month, and a top 10 class, a top 3 class in the SEC, and not have a bunch of guys where you're like, why'd they take that guy? Oh, God. Like, there's not a whole lot of that going on. So I'm noticing the distance from home, but I don't think it's an issue right now.
Kerry Cooks came through the studio this morning and was talking about recruiting, and he couldn't talk specifically about players, but you get the feeling that the Derrick Williams recruitment is not over. You mentioned that you were surprised by the announcement. Where do you find his recruitment at? Where do you see it end up finishing at?
I don't know. Again, we're far from signing day. I was a little surprised that Texas was like, Bama's been on him. Like, you would A&M, like you would have thought some of that, but the wave after Arch of kids to Texas wasn't just him. I mean, there's a bunch of them. So I don't know if that played a role in it. I don't know if NIL played a big role in it. I think that LSU probably wishes they could go back and kind of approach things a bit differently, like really go hardcore to push him to get him committed when, I think they were dealing with a lot of other things in January and February. It was putting a staff together, keeping a roster together, recruiting the guys currently on the roster, trying to get to signing day with Harold Perkins and all those guys. And I think in that time kind of probably is where they would say, oh man, if we could go back, we would be all over Derrick Williams. But look, they're going to do that now, and they've got connections all around Westgate, and I don't think that one's completely over. Now, I'm not telling you he's about to flip to LSU or anything like that. I just don't think that it's signed, sealed, delivered quite yet. A lot of football to be played this fall, a lot of recruiting to be done, a lot of visits to be made, and I think kind of he'll have to go through all those motions. So not done yet. And look, he's a top 5 player in the state, one of the best safeties in the country. Like, you just don't stop recruiting him.
Sure.
So they're only going to go harder from here.
Yeah, and you can't miss Jacoby Matthews and Derrick Williams in successive classes.
You don't want to, right?
Yeah.
It's like missing on those receivers last year when, Kendrick Law and
Aaron Anderson and
who's your boy?
Shaz.
Your boy, Shaz, and Aaron Anderson. They all leave and they all go to Bama. And it's like, that can't happen. Well, that means you got to get Shelton Sampson, right? And he's your 5-star wide receiver in state this year. So I think there is some of that. We talked about that with running back of kind of, all right, let's patch the leak there. We kept the 2 guys at home this time. And I think at wide receiver, you want to do that with Shelton and obviously at DB, and with a guy at safety like Derrick Williams, the best DB in the state. You want to be able to keep him at home. You don't want that to happen 2 years in a row.
Hashtag Shelton Stays was something that we saw really starting to trend over the weekend.
You into the hashtag?
No,
you a little too old for it?
Yeah, I didn't get into it. I mean, I think we did it at the Culotta show on the social media and mic'd up and stuff. But, I mean, does that mean
Culotta
something?
Stays? Culotta Stays? What was it?
Shea stays?
What was it?
Yeah. Get the hell out of here.
Well,
Culotta.
it was,
But does this mean anything to him?
Oh,
he's
it's always good to get your ego stroked
Sure.
a little bit, huh?
Does it mean enough?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be the reason he signs, but I think he'll notice it, right? And he's a super quiet. Anyone who's around the Catholic program will tell you, like, he's a super quiet guy. I think one of the Catholic people had told me, and I was like, you seen all this Shelton stuff? They're like, yeah, he probably hasn't, though, because he doesn't get on his social media. But they were like, look, his teammates and all that were blasting him with texts. Yo, do you see all this? Hey, all the players are
trending.
tweeting about you. All the recruits are tweeting about you. The fans. And, I think you kind of got to do what you got to do these days in recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it?
How hard will it be to hang on to Jalen Brown from Miami? Who's right in Miami's backyard. Miami has obviously changed their tactics in recruiting.
They're NIL'd up.
They're all ready to go. And what did you make of his commitment?
Well, it seemed like he wanted to be at LSU. He had made a couple of visits. He took an official. Kind of his family is, the group around him has seen LSU and gotten to meet with the coaches, and everything seemed to check out. And there was probably a few weeks back, let's say before his announcement, where LSU after the visit was kind of like, we might get him, but it's cautious optimism, right? It's like, we know what we're up against. Miami's NIL dealing everyone. He's from South Beach. They're going to continue to go after him, and even when you get him committed, you're going to have to hold on to him. But as kind of the days inch closer, I think the clouds kind of began to disperse, and it became kind of clear to the LSU side of, oh, whoa, like, we are getting him. He's being straight up. He's coming here, and his announcement wasn't big games. It was, I'm going to LSU.
Yeah,
put on the stuff.
Big, yeah.
No, let's rock. And I think he sees. One thing, look, they are coming off 500 seasons. We get that. They're changing their coaching staff. We get that. You turn on a TV as a kid right now, and anything NFL receiver-related is Jamar, is Justin, is these guys fresh out of LSU, that are making a ton of noise. And hopefully Terrace Marshall has a big year this year.
Russell Gage is about to have a huge year with Brady.
And you've got DJ Chark moving to a new team. So there's a lot of guys – beyond the Jarvis and Odell kind of age, the younger kids that are starting to really kind of make there was a while, right, where all the kids, the recruits would talk about Jarvis and Odell. And now it's this next wave of guys. And I think Jalen Brown sees that lineage of receivers and says, okay, if I go there and get developed, I can be like those guys. And gosh, I don't have Miami's track record. Miami's kind of sucked also there recently, so that's not completely fair. But like, they're not churning out 5-star, first round draft picks at receiver every year like LSU has been. So I think LSU had the edge up there, and I'm not sure NIL was some make or break for him. And if it was, then he probably turned something down bigger from Miami. I mean, no one's out here trying to pretend that LSU's outbidding everyone in the NIL game. Certainly not if you're throwing these A&M Miamis out there getting rumored at buying $10 million quarterbacks or whatever. And Jaden Rashada committed there. He didn't follow him there. So I think there's some optimism that they can hold on to him. And if you get Shelton Sampson, I think it makes Jalen Brown feel like, shit, that's a 1-2 punch. We can work with this.
Jefferson and Jam.
Yeah.
You mentioned the quarterbacks, and going into the cycle, nobody expected Arch. Nobody expected Eli Holstein, who has committed to Alabama and Arch, Texas, respectively. But when you look at Ricky Collins, he is committed to Purdue and has said that he's pretty steadfast there. But when you talk to people around LSU, it seems like they've turned up the heat on him the last couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, I'd say months, right?
Yeah, where does LSU stand in recruiting a quarterback in this cycle?
I think they'll take one. I don't think they're trying to skip any cycles of a quarterback. It's smart to take one every year, no matter what your depth looks like. Their depth looks great right now. Like, we see how quick that can change. Like, 2 guys bail, and then all of a sudden you're down to nobody in the. You got 2 guys, and that happened a lot in the recent years. And that's just the age of the portal and all of that. So I get it. So you don't want to skip any classes. You want to take a guy. I think that Joe Sloan and the staff did a good job of knowing early on, look, we're probably not going to get Arch. We're probably not going to get Eli. Let's not put all our eggs in that basket. And even while they were recruiting Dante Moore, Jaden Rashada, a number of national guys that had gotten offers, Ricky Collins was right there. They were having him on visits. They were having him over to watch practice. They were doing all the things you would do to a kid that you're recruiting heavily. So I don't think there ever came a point, and at least I would say there didn't come a point, and if one's like, maybe, a kid could feel like, oh man, I wasn't the top priority, whatever it might be. That's just kind of how recruiting can be sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of priorities. There's 8 guys they're going after at quarterback. I think the reality is that they pursued him as heavily as they did everybody else. And they can say, hey, look, well, let's just keep it going. We're focusing in now. If you want in, we want you to be the guy. And I think they'll get there with him in terms of really being like, hey, look, this is yours if you want it. We've got a spot. We want a quarterback. We want to keep you home. And people around Woodlawn love him. I mean, they think he's the real deal. People that have seen him play think he's the real deal. He's got some SEC offers. He's committed to Purdue, but has offers to play in this conference. So I think for me, he's a local guy. You've got a good quarterback room. You have time to develop him. I would take him and not bat an eye. And he's like a 4-star, the number 12 quarterback in the country. It ain't like we're talking about some scrub, right? I mean,
he just shined out at the Elite 11.
So you'll be very happy if, in my opinion, if you're an LSU fan, you're happy to come away with one of. If the state's going to give you 3 quarterbacks, which it never does, come away with one of them.
Yeah,
and I think that's where
can you talk a little more into that on how atypical this cycle is?
It
for the
never
state?
happens.
Yeah, like there's down defensive linemen, up in quarterbacks. I mean, it's a weird cycle, right?
I think high school coaches have always said, too, a reason for why Louisiana doesn't produce the quarterbacks that a lot of other states do is that they just put their best athlete at quarterback.
Johnson Kirkland.
Like,
Torrey Webster.
Yeah, we're going to snap it to you. Jacoby Matthews was the quarterback. Like, we're going to snap it to you, and you're going to run around, and if you throw it, fine, but if not, you're going to hand it off or you're going to run it. And,
right.
Whatever variation of offense you're running, quite often guys are putting their best athlete there. So there are quarterbacks kind of around the state that are starting to pop up and sign with, La Tech and in-state schools, UL, whatever it might be. So we're starting to see more quarterbacks kind of reach that D1 level, but nothing close to this year where you've got Arch is the number 1 player in the country. Eli's a top 10 quarterback. Ricky's right there on that edge of top 10 quarterback. He might be a top 10 quarterback on some sites. And like, they're lucky to have 1 every few years, not 3 in 1 year.
Sure.
So you'll take coming away with one of them and feel happy about it. And I think that's where they're going to trend
Is
towards.
that something that you think is going to continue just because of the 7-on-7 and how much there's so much emphasis on the position now?
Yeah.
So much exposure.
Right. Like they're almost being groomed to play quarterback as opposed to put your best athlete back there where, you're here for 4 years, you're the best guy I got, let's go run 21 power.
Yeah, I hope. I'd like to see more kind of elite quarterbacks coming from Louisiana. I mean, they're everywhere, even in Mississippi. I mean, Mississippi will turn out 2 or 3 a year. So I'd be curious to see if that doesn't become more of a – it won't be this. It won't be the number one quarterback in the country type stuff. But I do think that they could get back into it. It'd be nice to see if they could get into a little groove of every year you've got a guy that's kind of a top 15 national quarterback.
Does Arch look the part of a number one recruit?
You saw there was the Mike Farrell.
I saw that.
Boy, I think he had to issue like multiple statements after explaining what he. So his line was, "There's so many levels to this. People will argue he's not. If his last name wasn't Manning, he wouldn't be the number one overall player in the country.
Right.
If his last name wasn't Manning, he wouldn't be the number one quarterback in the country. If his last name wasn't Manning, he wouldn't be a 5-star. Mike went for he would be a 3-star." And he said, if I sent his film to coaches and told him he had no college offers, he might get, and he goes, 2? I was like, oh, come on now.
I mean, what's his deal, man? Like,
so I asked
6'5", 240.
I asked some college coaches, and I asked some people kind of just around that eval and do rankings and stuff like that. And they were all like, Bryce, stop.
Yes.
We'll take him right now. Let me,
like
3-star, you're in. No, I think Arch Manning is very good.
Yeah.
Very good. You'll ask any college coaches, catch him off the record when compliance ain't around and they can actually mention to you face-to-face, he's the real deal. Everybody wanted. Like, Bama, Georgia, Texas weren't fighting over a 3-star that had 2 offers, because his last name was Manning. Does his last name help? Yeah. But I don't see anything wrong with that. That's no different than me saying – I feel good about Odell because his dad was a first-round pick and he's got good bloodlines, and that his mom was an All-American in track. Like, that makes me feel better if you've got a lineage of people in your family that are very good at sports. If your last name's Manning and you play quarterback and you're being groomed by these guys, you get something in my book. You get more than 3 stars. I know that.
Right.
You get more than 2 offers.
Yeah, right.
You'll have a few offers. So, no, I thought that was – I'm not in that camp. I think Arch is the best quarterback in the state. I think I don't know anything about all these quarterbacks in the country, but people who do say that he's right up there. He would very easily can make the case for number one.
Offensive line in this state this year, it was a really good year for offensive linemen last cycle with Will Campbell and Emory Jones heading that up.
Yeah, Fitzgerald West came in early.
Yeah, and Bo Bordelon.
That was a real good year for him.
Zalance Hurd is headlining it this year. You got Tyjee Adams down in New Orleans. How do you like them going at this part of recruiting?
Yeah, Adams is at St. Aug and Hurd obviously being at Neville. Imagine, and Hurd is, I tweeted out a pic at summer camp. Let's see what the benefit of having the internet, which I did log into before we got here. Let's get you some measurements here.
On Hurd?
Hurd, 6'5.5", 305, long, no bad body weight. And you've got him and Will Campbell playing offensive tackle for you in high school.
Yeah, coach.
That A.J. Adams kid was running for 400 yards a game.
He didn't get touched until 11 yards down the field, 12 yards down the field.
No, that's when you get little Timmy. It's like, Timmy,
yeah,
you're getting in today.
Yeah, right.
Get to play with the ones.
To get you a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just run one direction behind those guys. Just
truck and trailer.
But boy, I bet Neville had some fun with those two guys. But I saw Hurd at LSU's camp. He's the real deal. I think LSU ultimately will wind up with him. He's ranked as high as the number 3 offensive lineman in the country, which puts him in 5-star territory. So that doesn't happen a ton either. A 5-star in Louisiana on the offensive line. We saw it last year, but for it to happen again with a kid at the same school up at Neville is a big deal. So you want to lock him up. And then Adams has been – Georgia was all over him. Florida State was all over him. Ole Miss is all over him. But I kind of think that as they continue to chip away there, Frank Wilson does work there. Brad Davis continues to recruit him. That's one that I would say right now I think winds up at LSU, and he's a top 10 player in the state on some recruiting rankings. Let's see where he's kind of hanging around. I think he's higher than that. He's as high as number 6 on one. Let's see, this is on 3's ranking. So 6'5.5", 283, big time player. Yeah. So that's another guy, and then Caden Jones at De La Salle has been playing basketball forever, and he's got great measurables. Another big kid like this, and they're kind of really been watching him. So the state's got probably 3, 4, 5 guys that you would say LSU's kind of monitoring on the O-line while they simultaneously recruit some national guys. But I think you want to walk away with, you at least want to nab a couple of those big in-state guys and then try to add a couple out-of-state guys. And it's another good, you always want to have kind of that 4 to 5 man O-line haul, and they're trending towards that.
And this is as confident as you can probably be in an offensive line class moving forward as you ever have probably at LSU, at least in recent memory, because Coach O is obviously very defensive line heavy. It feels like Brian Kelly shifts the pendulum back to the other side with Brad Davis, and Brian Kelly has more of an offensive side of the ball mentality. It seems like they want to shore up the offensive line the same way Coach O wanted to shore up the defensive line.
Yeah, no, and their track record at Notre Dame, it was kind of like, what's the secret? Y'all are churning out first-round picks every year.
Dallas Cowboy, Dallas Cowboy.
I think one thing they'll do, too, is this is what they did at Notre Dame. They were taking all the guys who were, 280, some guys who were 260 playing DN. It's like, we're going to move you and play you on the offensive line. And I think they found that there was a lot more to do with the athleticism there and adding some bulk to them instead of having to worry about you're going to need to drop 30 pounds. And then how athletic even are you, type thing. I think that they've just kind of got a different philosophy of the type of O-lineman they want to recruit. Kelly's talked about that on a couple of his press conferences, being like, I'm not going to give y'all the secret, but like we've got a formula. And like if a kid checks these boxes, he's the guy we want. And when you see their offer list, all of them look the same. They're like 6'5", 280, 270 to 300, like all that similar mold,
forwards.
All that similar mold of kids. So, and then I'll have sort of like position versatility. Like you could tackles that you can kick inside to guard. It's not a bunch of guards that you're like, man, we're going to play these guys at tackle now. It's like we've got a bunch of athletic kids, and development seems big for them. I do think, Lloyd, they're in a good spot, though. Will Campbell, obviously, real deal. They've already named this man a starter, and he was, should still be in high school whenever spring ball was going on, and he was working with the ones. We've said it a million times. I love Emory Jones. I won't be surprised if Emory Jones starts a game this year.
I agree.
Like
Florida State.
Like Florida State. You've got 2 young pieces that you can start to like get those guys in. They're here for 3 years, or longer. Start to build with that. What other young guy? Dellinger. You've got some other young guys on the roster. There's a handful of them. Fitzgerald West, Bo Borderline. We're bringing this new class, and all of a sudden I think you've got a feeling that, okay, we're building some depth here where we're not having to go
to
like
Stanford
they did now.
To get a quarterback. I mean, to get
right.
Harvard to get a center.
Harvard to get a quarterback. That happened before.
Too.
That happened before. Shout out Andrew Hatch.
My guy.
Trivia question of the day. I just gave the answer.
Sniped at Jordan here.
I just gave the answer.
Sniped.
Oh, boy.
Sniped.
The original sniped.
Jesus, bro.
He went to the wrong sideline, Coach.
All of us would have.
Yeah.
No, he went to the right sideline. He was like, y'all got a spot? Y'all got a
Take
spot?
all my stuff. Keep my helmet.
Once he fumbled that mouthpiece, it was over. It's like he's in a different planet.
Shea, this is a good question because Matt House said that they're going into this season evaluating some upperclassmen, including some seniors that could earn offers. Maybe we can come back to this discussion because I hate to put you on the spot. But Chazzy B says, #Ask Shea, who's a 23 Louisiana recruit who could earn an LSU offer during the senior season that many aren't talking about right now? And why is Shreveport, Northwood High School's DB, Marjavius Moss, I guess, not offered? Do you know anything about Moss?
That probably would have been my answer. I think that he's one they're going to want to watch as a senior a good bit. Northwood's got a couple of good players this cycle, but Moss is the real deal. Like, if you watch his film, he's versatile, playing some safety, playing some DB at corner, like, looks really good, but he didn't come down to camp. And, like, that's like a big evaluation piece to figuring out a DB that you haven't seen in person that you really want to put kind of through a combine setting and talk with him and, put him up against one-on-one and all these different things. And they didn't get that chance. So he's one that I think goes into his senior year with them kind of really watching him. Let's see. Baylor offered, so Randa signed off on an offer. He's got some in-state offers. He's got some, a few, like Vandy, like as an SEC offer. But LSU is definitely monitoring him, so that's one that I would say is up there on the list of guys who could get offered. Let's at least think of, I'm kind of scrolling this list of guys. Jamal Franklin's an offensive lineman out at Scotlandville who is getting some college attention for sure. Caden Jones, I think he got offered by the old staff. I mentioned him, though, a De La Salle offensive lineman. Delvin Whitaker, a kid over at West Feliciana, who's got an FSU offer as a linebacker. I like kid to watch for, I think, is Ashley Williams over at Zachary, who committed to Nebraska. I think he just committed to Nebraska. You know, Mickey's going to just come in here and pick the kids that he thinks they're not going to go after, obviously, and get them out there. But he's 6'4", 215, had a really good year last year for Zachary. And now going into his senior year, I think there's some pretty kind of lofty expectations being put on him. But he had some SEC offers. He's one that I know they're watching that could be a D lineman in the state that ultimately they offer.
Will Burton, hashtag Ask Shea. Shea, how's LSU looking with Colin Simmons, who I think is a stand-up defensive end out of Duncanville, Texas?
Colin Simmons. I think I may be stumped right here. Let's do some Googling. I'm not overly
Potter,
familiar
1, 2, 3.
with his recruitment right now. Okay, so this is a top 10 player, but I don't, and this for next year. Not
okay,
this
I'm
year.
sorry. Yeah, 24.
So, yeah,
24.
so I'm not too deep into his stuff yet, but LSU has offered. They're kind of in that lead group. Obviously, I'm checking a couple of these sites like the Crystal Balls and the prediction machines are starting to go in on LSU. So I would keep an eye on it. I know, gosh, it was end of June. Yeah, I guess it was end of June at the end of camp season when he was in and on a visit and kind of hanging around. So I would say that's when Jamar Cain's probably going in on pretty early. Number one edge rusher in the country. So no reason not to be. But, yeah, good. Shout out to – who was that asked question?
It was Will Burton.
There you go, Will. Catch – that's what I'm saying when I take time off over the summer.
Yeah, now you're really taking time off.
Now I'm having to go 24 class. I've got to read up. I've got to catch up.
We had Spiegelman on a couple weeks ago, and I butchered this kid's name, Chase Bacentis.
Okay.
I called him Bicentis from New Jersey. I know he was in on an official visit. He's another offensive lineman from out of the state that the crew has done some pretty good work on. I know that he was trending for a while towards Michigan State and Texas A&M got into the mix, but have you heard anything on Chase Bacentis, the New Jersey offensive lineman, and where LSU stands with him?
Nothing new, but I do know that the dialogue is ongoing there. He's a name that I've heard mentioned multiple times about someone that they kind of feel like they're in on with, and there's probably a handful now of offensive linemen outside the state that they're like, okay, we're kind of still in the mix there, but he did his big wave. June was busy for him. I think he's from New Jersey, so he did a Rutgers official. But then, as you said, A&M, LSU, Michigan State was in there. And he doesn't seem to be in some, like, massive hurry to go ahead and announce it. Now, look, kids decide all the time, all right, next week I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. But I'm weary of recruitments involving A&M and when A&M starts to kind of surge a little, because you know that they've got some money. And if it's going to come down to, if it's an NIL play, A&M can outbid most everybody out there. And how big of a factor does that become when you're trying to predict where a kid will go? But I think they've got some good relationships with him that dated back to even before this staff got put together, which I think helped. And since then, he seems to like Brad Davis a lot. He seems to like Brian Kelly a lot. So that's kind of kept the door open for a kid, from New Jersey. Not often a top 10 offensive tackle from Don Bosco in New Jersey is looking at LSU very seriously. Right. So they are definitely in the final group. They got one of his visits of that kind of small core group, but I haven't seen anyone go out and put a pick in yet to say, like, I feel good about him going one place or the next. All
right, coming down the stretch here, about to wrap up. Phillips Clinton says, hashtag Ask Shea. Shea, what about Kyle Prinn?
Kai Preen, he's a Louisiana kid, and another receiver in the state after Shelton Sampson that they've offered. I think he's ranked as an athlete, but he's a receiver. And he's at St. James now. He had been at Ascension Catholic. I think he was at Ascension Catholic before that, but might be wrong there. But a really good player. I mean, he's come by LSU a few times in the offseason. I didn't see him at camp, but I was only at the elite camp one. So, but he's been beyond high school film. He's been on the 7-on-7 circuit playing with teams and has looked the part. And they got their eval in, I guess, at one point in the spring. And I don't know if you call it like re-offered or like made sure he knew, hey, look, we're really coming after you. But it's like LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, kind of that wave of SEC schools that are pushing for him. But I would, between with him at St. James now and Frank and Cortez kind of being the guys who are going to be recruiting him as New Orleans guys, that's one I feel good about. We don't talk about him a ton either. You know, I think,
you don't.
But
right.
He's one that is ranked. Gosh, yeah, I mean, top 15 player in the state, and we're so far from the rankings being done anyways. But that makes you a top 200 player nationally, a top 10 athlete. So someone we're not talking about a ton for how highly ranked he is. But yeah, I feel good about that. I feel good about where they're kind of trending there.
David Risk, hashtag Ask Shea. Is LSU still recruiting David Hicks?
No, probably a little bit. He's a big D lineman out of Texas that I think early on when Jamar Cain came from OU, he was able to come from OU with this like Rolodex of defensive linemen that he'd been recruiting to Oklahoma. And you get to LSU, you're just putting on a different polo. You're recruiting the same guys.
Right,
I mean,
we talked to him a little bit about that.
And that's a big advantage for him. And I think Hicks was in that group. Now, look, he visited, I think, Miami, Michigan State, Oregon during the past, June month. I think that was kind of his stretch of visits. But A&M has been the school that a lot of people ultimately think he ends up at. He's ranked as I'll put it into perspective. If A&M and Texas are like really going out here and NIL-ing it and, doing the most and trying to fight that war on, battle on that front, he's the consensus number one player in Texas.
Wow.
So those two schools are going to do whatever they, A&M will do whatever they can to keep a kid from Katy home and, at A&M. So I think Cain did a good job. He popped 4 D linemen. Yeah. You've got some others still out there. I don't necessarily if I would put Hicks into that group where I would say, man, I'd pay attention to kind of everything he's got going on right now.
Let's take a quick break. Do you guys want to continue asking questions that are coming in through the Q&A? Maybe up until 11. I got to head out to an appointment here at 10:45, just right down the street. Let's take a break, reset real quick. We'll come back either with more information from Shea or we'll wrap it up here on the Jordy Culotta Show on a special edition. Remember, we'll be doing this every Wednesday. Every Wednesday beginning around 10 a.m., we'll be sitting down and talking to Shea on getting the latest on recruiting. So make sure you've got your questions lined up each week for what happens here on our recruiting updates with Shea each week on the Jordy Culotta Show, driven and powered by Go Chevrolet.
Hey Baton Rouge, when traveling through Natchez, Mississippi, whether you need to fill up your vehicle or your belly, stop by Go-Mart and On The Go Deli. Go-Mart has clean restrooms, community coffee, an awesome beer cave, and a great selection of anything you might need on your trip. So stop by Go-Mart at 4 Sergeant Prentice Drive as you're entering Natchez on the left, and visit Tom and Wright Granning and their awesome team at Go-Mart.
We're going to do it right. The Tiger Athletic Foundation and in partnership, obviously, hand in hand with what we do, funded a master plan study because I wanted to see, hey, what we needed, and I just didn't want my opinion. I've been a few places, and I have a good one, I think, but you just want to see how and what our needs are, and so we're in that process of looking at it, and obviously, the PMAC is 50 years old this year, and probably needs some updating. It's got good bones, and maybe we can see what we can do with that. Same thing with all that property that we have both down Nicholson and where we are currently on Nicholson and North Stadium. Is that, hey, is this the proper use and best use for that? And hand in hand with the university and what we do with TAF. We'll make those decisions, and we'll be prudent and thinking about what and how we do.
But this opportunity was different. You have a chance to come to a place with unbelievable tradition, work for the winningest head coach in college football. Just be at a state. I've never been at a state where football's king, and if you just dominate your state, you're going to get some of the best players that there are.
Sure. We've seen the BK takeover stuff from LSU and social media, and really in his short time in Baton Rouge, there's been a lot of people embracing his
his approach to building this roster. What's it like to recruit alongside him?
Oh, it's been great. Coach has been awesome to me because he lets me be myself when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to coaching. He lets his coaches coach, lets his coaches recruit. So I have no complaints on that end. And when I need him to get in touch with a kid, he's there for me. The communication line has been great. He's just been nothing but supportive.
Welcome back. Jordy Culotta Show. Me, Shea, Noah, Stewie, Ron. We'll continue rolling with your recruiting questions as Jordy just skated out. What's an appointment across the street? What does that even mean?
I don't even know.
I love that the commercials were like, here's Jordy and Scott Woodward. Here's Jordy and Matt House. Here's Jordy and Jamar Kane. And we're back with Shea and Noah and Lloyd and Stewie.
The B team, but the B plus team.
Are we the
with
B
Shea.
team? I don't know if we're that.
Well, you pop up the GPA a little bit. If it's just us three, it's brutal.
It's cooked.
Well, yeah, no show today.
If we're doing 15 minutes of this, we're Andrew Hatchett. We're about to walk to the wrong sidelines at the end of this one. Coach, take me out.
Take me out this game.
I'm done.
All right, we'll go through the chat. Get your questions in. Ask Shea, and we will go through. We have a couple that came in during the break. Let's see where we are. I don't know how to say his name. Basantis. Where's LSU stand with?
That was the kid we just ran down, the New Jersey one.
Oh, okay, that's him. Okay, that's
yeah.
what they just
So
asked.
start from there. The next one.
Let's go. Down the list we go. Talking about crabs in the chat.
There's one on Twitter. It said if LSU doesn't get a quarterback in this class, who do they focus on next year?
I think that they will get a quarterback in this class. That's just kind of my opinion. And I think it'll be Ricky Collins. Is just kind of my guess. I think ultimately they do win that. But regardless if they get one or don't, I think that they're hard on 24 guys no matter what. So there'll be guys pop up. So DJ Lagway is definitely one to watch out of Texas, number 3 quarterback in the country for next year. He's already been on campus. He's not committed anywhere. It's kind of an A&M LSU.
Baseball guy, too. Huh?
Yeah, big baseball guy, too. So that one's kind of brewing between those two teams. Julian Cyan out in California is a guy they've had on campus and is not committed anywhere, and they've been recruiting pretty hard. I could go up and down. Honestly, I'm looking at the list of top 20 quarterbacks for next year's class, and almost half these guys were at LSU's camp. So kudos to Joe Sloan for getting a lot of guys for the future out there to throw. Then you get a feel for them. You kind of see who they are as a player. Only a few dominoes have dropped, not a ton yet for next year's quarterbacks. So a lot of guys are obviously out there and availables. But I would start with Lagway. I know they like Sayan a lot. And then from there, I think it's probably going to continue to kind of shuffle as they still have junior years ahead of them. So a lot of evaluation still to come. Here's another thing. Not so many, but a lot of quarterbacks like Walker didn't start till he was a junior. There's a lot of guys who just don't.
Then you put
We have another quarterback on
yeah.
our team, and he starts, and now as a junior, you're seeing me for the first time, type thing. So for next year's class, there's a lot of guys that will pop up that we aren't talking about right now that'll be big, being recruited by LSU.
And how much do you see LSU putting an emphasis? I mean, obviously we've made a lot on this show of the recruiting for the upcoming class, but how much do you see them? He finally gets his staff together. These people are going to be. You see, Brian Kelly has a 10-year deal. He's able to. A lot of it felt like damage control early on, so he wasn't able to really focus on recruiting. You didn't really have anybody recruiting for LSU over basically the entire year last year. Like, Edo knew he was fired. He's not going to go beat the streets for, recruiting because he's not going to be here. And so I wonder how much have they shifted from maybe, put some emphasis on this class that they had already recruited at Notre Dame or at Oklahoma, wherever they may be. And then now that they're at LSU, we're able to go you skip a class. And you start, all right, now we start building the fence around Louisiana for the next year. Yeah,
I think there's going to be a good amount of that. I think there was that obvious window where it was like keep the current roster together and just load up on transfers. They signed more transfers than anybody in the country.
They had to.
Yeah, right. So you were dead even split, I think, on transfers and actual high school signees, which I don't think will ever happen again. At least you don't want it to. And Kelly's talked about that as like not wanting to be the way they're doing it. That was the quick fix. I think now they're going to get into this class, like I said, we've talked about Louisiana and in-state and them coming in and having to work on, kind of on short order to get into the recruitment with a lot of these guys, a handful of which we didn't think were ever going to LSU anyways. So I think if they let's say they close and get Zalance Hurd and Tyree Adams and Shelton Sampson type of guys, and then you've got some good guys from outside the state you keep adding, and you hold on to the guys, and you've added some transfers, you'd consider it, you'd be like, okay, that was a solid haul. That's a good year one. We'll see how things go on the field, obviously, as well. But as you get into year two, I think then they've really settled in and say, okay, this is what we want to do in Louisiana. This is what we want to do outside the state. This is what we want to do in the portal. And it's very kind of structured in terms of we know we want it, the pie chart to have this much of Louisiana and this much outside and this much of the portal. And the portal number will keep shrinking. That's a quick fix. And
I think that.
And like Brian Kelly's so big on like development and all that. Like
it gets you in
portal
in the program.
is not developing anybody.
That's not graduating champions.
And now there is this element of the portal where it's like some of the guys came and had only spent a year in college, so it was kind of like they redshirted and they still have 4 years, so they're kind of a recruit still, but they've been in a program, so it's a little different. But I think they'll start to go a lot heavier on high school kids.
And if they miss a quarterback in this class, I feel like that's probably what they're like. That may be the plan moving for like you say, a quick fix. Like I think that would be the Ricky Collins plan. If you can't get him in the boat right now, you're able to see him, watch him. He'll probably start at Purdue whenever he gets there. Then you get 1 year, 2 years of him at Purdue, and if the chips fall your direction, you can get him in the portal back to LSU because in his heart of hearts, he probably wants to play here, but he sees how loaded that quarterback room is.
And this isn't LSU specific either, but it applies to him. But I've heard this from other college coaches. And it's something I haven't thought a ton about, and then it's just like, God, that's so much for y'all to deal with. But these college coaches in other states too, that where you have to deal with your home state or your guys are saying, hey, we have a lot of guys that, like we may not offer or we're kind of on the fence about, but like we're recruiting the hell out of them because what happens if they go and ball somewhere and then get into the portal and then we come around, they're like, you didn't even answer my calls in high school. Like, nah, dog,
contact.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, bro, we were all over you. It just didn't work out at the time. Like, we had taken another quarterback and you went there, but now the dominoes are lining up. So a lot of it is with this recruiting too is thinking ahead of if this kid, if Joe Fuchsia, if Greg Brooks, if these guys hit the portal one day, what's going to give us a chance? Like, do we need to be recruiting them in high school? Do we need, and I think all of that kind of goes on right now.
Not only are they going to hit the portal, can we make them hit the portal? Like because you've seen the way that the transfer portal works, where they have the inroads. Let me call your high school coach's best friend's daughter and see if she goes to Arkansas, and we can get you on the phone with somebody. Like that's the way college football works. But we got a couple of ashtrays here from our guy Cordell Music. Who do you see flipping their commitment to LSU? Anybody of this recent class that LSU might be able to flip? I
mean, maybe Ricky from Purdue to LSU.
Right.
That'd be probably the first one that jumps out at me. Oh man, I'd have to. That's a good question.
What about Derrick Williams?
Derrick Williams would be one you'd want to happen. I think his was kind of relatively fresh. Ricky's been committed to Purdue for a long time now.
He committed in the fall.
Yeah, so it's almost a year, right? Yeah. So
and he seems adamant about Purdue.
And he's taking his visits there and all that. So he's been firm with them. We'll see what happens, but Derrick Williams would certainly be one that I would like. I don't think Arch is flipping his commitment. I highly doubt Eli is. When Tackett and those guys make a decision, I don't think they'll backtrack on it, and I wouldn't predict LSU. So yeah, I would have kind of that Derrick Williams range of Ricky Collins as two guys that you would say in state that you'd want to try to get them flipped.
Where does LSU sit? This is my question, not from the chat, but you've talked about him a good bit. Jordan Matthews.
You got to hashtag it.
Hashtag Ask Shea.
Yes.
From Lloyd. Where does LSU stand with Jordan Matthews, the DB from Woodlawn?
Yeah, I think that I don't think they're the leader, but I think there's a myriad of reasons you could say why, whether it was kind of like was the old staff prioritizing him, was the new staff prioritizing, was the old staff prioritizing him more than the new staff? I don't know how it all fleshed out behind the scenes, but we've seen Jordan talking about teams, and he's kind of said, hey, look, LSU is not recruited me as heavily as some other schools have, if I'm being fair about the entirety of my process. And I think that's why he's looked at other schools. But boy, I can tell you, LSU's all over him. They're recruiting him heavily. Obviously, they're recruiting him and Ricky, so you've got 2 kids at Woodlawn. But he put on a show in track and field this spring, and it was very good. And then more offers started to roll in, and it was sort of that's an important piece to an eval period is kids doing track and field. And I know a lot of coaches were like, damn, all right, he can play. Like, that's the type of guy you need to keep home, and it is. Those are the type of guys you want to keep in Louisiana. And if they're not ready day one, that doesn't matter. You can develop them. That's what you're paid to do. So I think that's one guy they're going to continue to push for all the way till the end.
And we got another #Ask Shea, Chazzy
Yes.
B.
Chazzy
B. Since he was brought up earlier, talking about the Neville offensive lineman with, who was running behind him. Are you surprised that 22 running back Ajay Allen didn't get an offer from LSU out of Neville?
I thought, not shocked, but I wouldn't have been surprised had he. I think that they were also chasing that, like, Trevante Citizen kind of to the end, right? And that sort of was the focus for him, was trying to keep him home at that second signing day. And you had Frank Wilson kind of working on a real short order there to try to get it done. And ultimately, when he went to Miami, I think.
Mm-hmm. When he put the LSU hat on, he flipped on us.
All about relationships.
He put every hat on.
He did. He put every hat on.
But Allen ended up at Nebraska. So that was, I think he finished as, number 40, around top 40 running back in the country. But be interested to see a lot of, I guess the Mickey Joseph connection, certainly, but a lot of LSU dudes on Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Palmer, and obviously guys like this coming in.
DeColdest Crawford.
DeColdest. Be interesting to watch if any of these guys can kind of start making some waves.
All right, we got a couple more. Any word on #AskShay, of course. Any word on the 3-star? He only gave me last names. Moss, obviously Jai Eugene Jr., or Harvey Broussard. I know they have gotten looks, but no offers yet.
Yeah, and they camped. Harvey Broussard's a really good in-state receiver and a guy that I think people forget. And this is a good example of all those guys, right? All 3 of them. And we talked a little bit about Marjavius Moss earlier. Who was the second guy you said before Harvey?
Jai Eugene.
Oh, Jai Eugene's son.
Never felt older.
They're teammates, though, right?
Makes
Harvey
me
Broussard?
feel so old.
I remember seeing him at games, like tailgating. He would walk around. Lil Ja was just with him everywhere, and now he's about to be a formidable player.
I can remember covering Jai's recruitment, and he did not go to Michigan because he was having his son and said he wanted to stay home. And
Lil Ja.
And here we are, and now his kid's being recruited as a Destrehan. Makes me feel old.
They are teammates, right? Him and Harvey Broussard.
Broussard is at St. Martinville, and I'm pretty sure Jai might still be at Destrehan.
Yeah.
But those guys are guys, and for all colleges, senior, like, the most important eval stretch is your senior year. Like, that's the last time you'll be playing the oldest and the most experienced, you have the most playing time. Like, that's the biggest indicator of what your talent will be at the college level. And quite often it gets thrown by the wayside because people are like, well, I've already got all the, we've got 20 commitments. I'm not really that worried about watching their senior film or how they might be trending up or down. But those are guys I think that all have a chance to kind of really trend up. And Broussard, for sure, I think he's one that if he has a big year, he's already got Baylor and some Arkansas SEC offers like that. So, we're talking about a dude who's going to push for, kind of 4-star status and certainly maybe some bigger offers. And we'll see what happens with LSU and certainly some other teams kind of in that realm of breaking through the true kind of Power 5 glass ceiling. Eugene's interesting. I think he plays quarterback, but I'm sure he's going to be an athlete.
He doesn't play DB that much.
Yeah, right. And
wide receiver?
No, he plays.
I know he plays quarterback with the team, but when he goes to camp,
like when they get into like end of game situations, the team's throwing the ball, he goes to DB. But like during the game, he's the quarterback, and then he goes to the sidelines when they're on defense.
His crystal balls, prediction machines, all that are heavy on Ole Miss. So he's got an SC offer. That's a big offer to have. Yeah, corner, 6'8", 188.
6'8"?
6 foot, 188.
Oh, you're saying, Jesus Christ. I've seen him play. That's no way.
He can't run fast, but
he's
boy,
tall.
can he stand there and block it.
Put him on the goal line. One more, Ask Shea. Any info on Nicholas Harbor out of Maryland?
He recently...
Nicholas with a Y.
Yeah. He recently just dropped some new teams, I thought.
10-200 guy.
Yeah, that was a kid that made, like, crazy waves when he was, like, running track... Like, went viral, the track and field clips of, like...
Like Cardell Thomas?
Yeah, but this kid was like 6'5", 235, running 10 flats or whatever. 10-3 in the 100. 21, 3.6 in the 200 at 6'5", 240. Whoa.
I
Good
wouldn't
night.
take him.
Yeah.
Get him. Maryland, Michigan, LSU, USC, Miami. So he's still kind of got this group of kind of main teams. Let's see. I think his official visit's in the fall, though. Let me get you a date here. October 8th, LSU's playing Tennessee. He'll be on campus for a visit.
It's a nice visit.
Get your Nicholas with a Y t-shirts ready. And a C and a K.
And a cat, Nicholas.
Nicholas.
All right, we got one more interesting question from Edub.
Oh, God.
Hashtag Ask Shea. BK offered Mikael Harrison pilot while at ND, but he hasn't offered him at LSU. Any rhyme or reason behind that?
I think the kids they offered at Notre Dame are different than the ones, and I think they're learning more and more of that as time goes on. But Notre Dame was so much academic hurdles too. It was
Graduate champions.
We have to get guys who are going to meet all these academic requirements, that have all these prerequisites, and that you're taking in high school. That when their kids commit as juniors, like they're having to put them on. All right, you're loading up on these courses to be able to get in, and it's a very much kind of like, all right, like that's why I don't think Notre Dame has a ton of decommits, because the kids are like, I'm a year into AP Cal right now. I ain't got time to flip.
24 college credits.
I ain't got no, I don't have time to answer any recruiting calls. I got to finish.
It's not NIL, it's ACT.
Yes, that's the whole
SAT.
SAT, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's a different breed of guy. Like, obviously, there'll be some overlap of type of players they recruit, but
that's what you want to see, right? You want to see Brian Kelly start, and you don't want him to recruit the same style of player that he recruited at Notre Dame.
What GPA you shooting for, Lloyd?
None.
2.8.
Yeah,
like
2.6.
Solid.
Got a 2.5 to play.
Tells me you're spending a lot of time out there,
out there
in the field.
Yeah, you're honing your craft. Don't need you in the classroom, dude. Yeah, get office hours.
So I'm not shocked that kind of some kids that they would take there, that they kind of wouldn't turn around and be all over here. And I hear so often, and I think it's probably true, like there's a type of kid who goes to Notre Dame, like that. Maybe a lot of them grow up wanting to go to Notre Dame, or they go there and they take a visit and like truly fall in love with like the campus and the the idea and the history and
Rudy.
Some of it. There were kids they wanted that they had committed or were going after hard, and didn't ultimately, even some they didn't even get back in on, because after they felt it out behind the scenes, I think Kelly and they were like, I think we sold that kid a little too hard on Notre Dame. He ain't flipping. Like,
did too good of a job.
We did too good of a job, huh?
Yeah, he wants to major in chemistry.
Yeah,
it's not going to work here.
It happens, but
last one before we wrap up, and we'll be back. We'll be back tonight, 6 to 8 for Mic'd Up with Mikey Matuk and Jared Mitchell. Not sure we have on the guest book, but we're last second on that thing. We'll probably get some player or coach. We'll get somebody in there.
Just make it up.
Just make it happen.
Mike Trout.
Yeah, fantasy league. So
he's in.
Yeah, we'll be live 6 to 8 tonight with Mic'd Up, Mikey Matuk, Jared Mitchell. Get a guest list out. We'll tweet it out. And last question here before we go live tomorrow for Jordy Culotta Show, 7 to 9 a.m. every day. What position does LSU need to focus on moving forward for the next couple of years?
Oh, man.
Next year. We'll go there.
Like not the current class, like moving into the future.
Yeah, where's the position of need for LSU next year? You don't have to say quarterback because they seem good there, depending on how the portal works out.
I think receiver is going to be like, they don't have like, I'll give you the breakdown because I got numbers. Hold on, Lloyd. I don't leave you hanging here. They have Kayshawn Jure, Jack Besh, Hilton, Brian Thomas, Neighbors, Kyron Lacey, and Landon Ibieta. All sound great. All really good high school players, many of which have already proven themselves in the college stage. That's 8 guys. That's not a lot. Like some receiver rooms have like 13. Now, not everyone's playing, but you have that many. Let's see. Jure will be done. Kayshawn will be done. By that time a year from now, Brian Thomas and Malik and all them are going to be juniors.
Jack Besh will probably be gone. If you look forward, you only have one more year with him.
Yeah, like you've got all those guys will be juniors a year from now. So yeah, I think you're having to turn over that receiver room, which is why I think Jalen Brown was such a big deal. I think Sheldon Sampson's such a big deal. We'll see a guy like Kai Preen and then kind of what they do into the future. But I certainly think you don't think about it like that just because they're all really good, but they don't have a ton of receivers.
Right, but it feels like which is crazy to think.
When you got ballers, it feels like you got a lot.
It's a position of strength, and then but when you go down the line like that, it's Maybe it's you
And
turns over in a year and they're all gone.
And when guys were banged up or whatever in spring ball, remember there would be a lot of days where they'd be running first team with a bunch of walk-ons.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, shoot, man.
It's probably fun for them.
Well, yeah, get some love.
Oh yeah, a lot of love.
That's when you want to face that 6'8" DB. You can't really
hand up.
Just hand up.
But sorry, Stoned Musso. That's who asked the question. I'd never leave your name out, bro. Stoned Musso. That's another show, another time, another day. Speaking of, I think we'll wrap up. Shay, thank you.
Yep.
Noah, thank you. Stewie, thank you.
Glad
Ron,
we keep
always.
it rolling. We didn't even need
Jamil.
Jordy. We didn't even need Jordy.
No, I don't think this thing can run smoothly. I hope that appointment, whatever happened to that appointment, I hope it went well. But we'll be back tomorrow morning, 7 to 9 a.m., Jordy Culotta Show. And then tonight, 6 to 8 p.m., mic'd up.
And I'll be back next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday from Superior.
Boom. From somewhere.
Live.
Probably from here.
Probably from here. With a Superior Margarita.
Later.
Bring 'em.